The first medic drone reached the banquet table before anyone understood there had been a fight. One moment, 5 Apex cadets were standing over the human girl, smiling with the lazy cruelty of creatures born with claws, armor, venom, and generations of military worship behind them. The next, all 5 were on the floor. One had stopped breathing for 3 seconds. Another was curled against the polished stone, both arms locked uselessly against his chest. A third stared at his own legs as if they belonged to someone else. The remaining 2 were conscious, shaking, and too terrified to make a sound. Mara Ven had not risen from her chair. Her cup sat upside down in front of her, perfectly centered on the white ceremonial cloth. Her hands rested flat beside it. Her face showed no anger, no triumph, no fear. Only stillness. The kind of stillness that made the entire hall realize, too late, that silence was not the absence of violence. It was the warning before it. Above them, the floating banners of the Dominion War Academy shimmered in the artificial dusk, displaying the proud sigils of 12 predator species. The Carvax Talon, the Silari Fong, the Othran Crown of Bone, species that had conquered moons before humanity had built its first orbital elevator, species that taught their children that mercy was a training error and hesitation was genetic weakness. And at the center of their sacred banquet hall sat one human cadet in a plain black uniform, surrounded by collapsed champions. No one moved, not the instructors on the upper platform, not the cadets frozen with jeweled cups halfway to their mouths, not the academy commander, whose silver eyes had narrowed the instant Mara turned her cup over, long before the first body fell. He had recognized something. So had the human observer standing near the rear exit, an older woman in diplomatic gray who had gone very still, as if she had just watched a sealed door open in a burning ship. The first injured cadet tried to speak. His mandibles clicked once, twice, then failed. The medic drone scanned him and flashed red. Neuromuscular shock. The second scan flashed red. Respiratory interruption. The third, voluntary motor collapse. A ripple passed through the hall. Not sound exactly, but the collective pressure of hundreds of predators realizing they had just witnessed something their instincts could not categorize. Mara finally blinked. That tiny movement broke the spell. "Cadet Ven," Commander Vaylor said from the platform, his voice amplified across the chamber. "Explain yourself." Mara looked up at him. She did not glance at the 5 cadets. She did not look at the drones trying to keep them conscious. She did not look at the academy cameras still broadcasting the banquet to every combat cohort in orbit. "I was touched without consent during a submission ritual," she said calmly. "I ended the contact." A low growl rolled from the Carvax tables. 5 of their bloodline heirs lay broken in front of her, and she had described it like closing a door. Vaylor descended 1 step. "You attacked 5 Dominion cadets during a ceremonial event." "No, Commander," Mara said. The hall tightened around her answer. "They attacked 1 human." The human observer at the rear lowered her eyes, not in shame, but in recognition. Her hand moved to the sealed black file, clipped to her belt. Vaylor saw it. For the first time since the banquet began, the commander looked afraid. Mara reached forward, lifted the upside-down cup, and placed it upright again. All 5 injured cadets began screaming at once. The screams lasted 9 seconds before the commander ordered the hall sealed. Not evacuated, not cleared, sealed. Every door folded shut with a heavy magnetic thud. The banquet lights shifted from ceremonial gold to emergency blue, washing the polished tables, frozen cadets, and bleeding pride of 5 great war houses in the color of disaster. Above them, the Dominion banners stopped shimmering. The broadcast drones stayed in the air, their black lenses still recording, but their outgoing signal died in a burst of static that rippled across every viewing screen in orbit. Mara Ven sat beneath all of it, without moving. The 5 Apex cadets were lifted onto suspension stretchers, their bodies trembling under restraint fields. None of them were dying. That was the first thing the medic drones confirmed, and somehow it made the silence worse. If they had been torn open, poisoned, burned, or crushed, the Academy would have understood. Violence was a language every species in that hall respected, but this was different. No broken table, no blood spray, no visible strike marks, no weapon residue, no thermal discharge, no illegal implant signature. 5 elite cadets, each trained since childhood to kill in low gravity, heavy gravity, vacuum, water, ash storm, and nerve gas, had touched one quiet human girl and collapsed as if their own bodies had rejected them. A Carvax instructor slammed one clawed hand against the command rail. "Run the feed again." Commander Vaylor did not answer at first. His silver eyes remained fixed on Mara's cup. Only when the instructor growled again did Vaylor turn toward the nearest tactical display. Replay from contact. The banquet hall's central hollow field came alive. A perfect blue reconstruction of the last 30 seconds unfolded above the tables. 5 Apex cadets approached Mara. The tallest one, Rul Dravik, heir to the Carvax 7 spear line, leaned close enough for his armored shoulder ridges to cast a shadow across her plate. His mouth moved. The feed carried no private audio, but everyone remembered the shape of his words. "Submit, little animal." Mara folded her napkin once. The hall watched more closely. Rul placed 2 fingers on her shoulder. Mara's left hand shifted less than 3 centimeters. Rul dropped. Before the second cadet could react, his own forward motion took him over the table edge. Mara's wrist turned. Not fast, not dramatic, just precise. The second cadet's breathing stopped. The third lunged, and Mara's elbow rose as if she were adjusting her sleeve. His legs failed. The fourth reached for her throat. Mara leaned back by the width of a coin, and he struck the chair instead, screamed once, then went rigid. The fifth tried to retreat. That was the part that made the hall stop breathing. Mara did not chase him. He fell anyway. The replay froze on the image of her still seated, one hand near the overturned cup, 5 bodies around her like offerings to a god no one had believed in. "Again," the Carvax instructor said, but his voice had changed. Vaylor ran it again, then slower, then frame by frame. No one spoke after the 6th replay. From the rear of the hall, the human observer finally stepped forward. Her name was Ambassador Elian Cross, though everyone at the Academy knew she had never truly been an ambassador. Her spine was too straight. Her eyes measured exits before faces. Her gray diplomatic coat had no medals, but the older instructors watched her with the wary attention soldiers give to unexploded ordnance. "Commander," Cross said, "you should release Cadet Ven to human supervision." A hiss of outrage rose from the predator tables. Vaylor did not look away from the frozen hollow. "This is a Dominion Academy matter." "No," Cross said. "It became a human matter the moment your students initiated a submission ritual against one of ours. Your cadet injured 5 heirs of recognized war houses. Our cadet remained seated." The sentence landed with surgical cruelty. Mara looked at Cross for the first time. Something passed between them, silent and old, and then vanished. Not fear, not guilt. Recognition. Vaylor saw it. So did half the hall. That was when suspicion began to spread faster than panic. The Dominion War Academy had stood for 900 standard years in orbit above Verath, a storm-wrapped gas giant whose lightning storms were visible through the banquet dome like veins of white fire. It was not merely a school. It was the forge where coalition fleets selected future commanders. Its ranking system decided who led armies, who guarded colonies, who sat closest to power when wars began. Every species had a place. The Karvax were ranked first in close-quarters aggression. The Silari were first in reflexive aerial assault. The Othran dominated endurance trials. The Velkothi mastered fear response suppression. Each bloodline, each evolutionary advantage, each sacred predator trait had been measured, recorded, and celebrated across generations. Humans were listed near the bottom. Adaptive, cooperative, pain-tolerant, high-stress improvisation, dangerous only in groups, physically unimpressive alone. That classification had allowed the Academy to accept Maraven as a political gesture and dismiss her as a tactical inconvenience. One human girl in the highest combat cohort had been useful theater, proof that the Dominion was fair, proof that humanity, newly admitted to Coalition space, could stand in the same hall as apex species and know its place. Rul Dravik and his 4 companions had only been meant to remind her of that place. They had planned it perfectly. The banquet was ceremonial, the cameras public, the rules ancient. If Mara submitted, humans would be humiliated. If she resisted emotionally, humans would be labeled unstable. If she struck first, humans would be banned from command trials before the first semester ended. But the replay showed something no law clerk, commander, or bloodline advocate could easily use. She had not struck first. She had not even stood up. Valor dismissed the cadets to their quarters under armed escort, but the damage had already escaped the sealed hall. Someone had copied 3 seconds of the frozen internal feed before the blackout. By midnight, every dormitory level had seen it. By first bell, the entire academy had a name for it, the seated defeat. By second bell, the name had changed, the human silence. Mara walked to combat theory class, under the eyes of 600 cadets pretending not to stare. Claws paused over ration trays. Antennae lowered. Mandibles clicked in nervous patterns. Species that had mocked humans for soft skin and rounded teeth now moved aside before she reached them, then looked angry at themselves for doing it. Mara gave them nothing. No smile, no threat, no explanation. That made it worse. Because arrogance can survive defeat if it understands the weapon. It can survive pain if it knows the rule it violated. But it cannot survive a mystery that sits quietly in a black uniform and turns pages while 5 apex heirs breathe through medical tubes 3 levels below. In the infirmary, Rul Dravik woke, screaming. Not from pain. The nerve shock had faded. His bones were intact. His muscles responded. His venom glands were functional. His armor plates had not cracked. But when the medic asked what he remembered, the heir of the 7th spear line curled his claws into the bedding and whispered, "I touched her, and my body stopped asking me for permission." That statement reached Commander Valor before sunrise. He listened to the recording once, then again. Then he opened a restricted Dominion archive and searched for 2 words he had not believed would ever matter. Human restraint. The system denied him access. A higher authority had sealed the file 31 years earlier. Valor sat alone in his office, while Varatha's lightning flashed beneath the glass floor. For the first time in decades, the commander of the Dominion War Academy did not feel like a predator guarding a hierarchy. He felt like something very old had entered his school wearing a cadet uniform, and it had only shown them level 1. By third bell, the Academy stopped calling Mara Ven a cadet. Not officially. Officially, she was still Human Exchange Candidate Ven Cohort 9, Combat Command Track, provisional ranking 72 out of 73. Her name remained in the student registry. Her meal allotment remained unchanged. Her dormitory door still open to her palm print, and her training schedule still displayed on the wall screen above her narrow bed. But language changed first. Always. In the corridors, she became the incident. In the tactical forums, she became the anomaly. In the private encrypted channels of the war houses, she became the human problem. Mara noticed all of it and reacted to none of it. That unsettled them more than if she had walked through the academy smiling. The official inquiry began in Chamber 6, a circular investigation room buried beneath the academy's dueling decks, where every surface could become a recording lens. Commander Valor sat above the floor in a suspended tribunal chair, flanked by 3 legal adjutants and 2 species rights observers who looked as if they regretted accepting the assignment. Ambassador Elian Cross stood near the only exit with her hands folded behind her back, expression mild, posture military. Mara stood alone in the center. The chamber projected the banquet replay around her in full sensory reconstruction. The smell of ceremonial spice, the low growl of crowded predator cadets, the pressure wave of Rul Dravik's body leaning over her. Every movement magnified, mapped, measured, and slowed until a single blink took 6 seconds. Cadet Ven, Valor said, state for the tribunal the nature of the technique used. I ended contact, Mara said. One of the legal adjutants clicked its mandibles. That is not a technique. It was enough. A dangerous silence spread through the chamber. The replay froze on Rul's fingers pressing into Mara's shoulder. Thousands of sensor lines appeared around the image, mapping force, angle, muscle tension, respiratory timing, electrical activity, skeletal pressure, and chemical output. Every measurable thing the Academy could record had been recorded, and none of it made sense. Valor gestured with 2 fingers. Analysis. The chamber AI answered in a cool, genderless voice. No external weapon detected. No illegal augmentation detected. No toxin transfer detected. No kinetic impact exceeding Academy disciplinary limits detected. No cybernetic interference detected. No electromagnetic pulse detected. Then why did 5 cadets collapse? The Carvax legal representative demanded. The AI paused. It should not have paused. Cause undetermined. Mara heard the smallest intake of breath from Ambassador Cross. Not fear. Recognition again. Valor heard it too. Run predictive combat models, he ordered. All known species. The chamber filled with ghost images. Carvax countergrappling. Silari nerve strikes. Othran mass locks. Velkothi pressure disruption. 38 recognized close contact disciplines unfolded around Mara's frozen body, each overlaid on the banquet motion. One by one, the Academy AI rejected them. Mismatch. 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 Then the system reached human combat archives. The display went black. Access restricted. No one moved. Valor slowly turned toward Cross. Ambassador. Cross's face remained calm. Commander. Why are Academy systems restricted from analyzing human combat doctrine? Because your Academy signed the restriction treaty. We signed many treaties. This one you should have read. The legal adjutants shifted uneasily. Mara kept her eyes forward, but inside her chest, something tightened. Cross had not come here to defend her innocence. She had come to prevent a door from opening too far. Valor descended from the tribunal chair. Cadet Ven, were you trained by the Terran military? No. Were you trained by a classified human defense institution? No. Were you trained in prohibited neuromuscular warfare? No. The Carvax representative slammed a claw against the railing. Then what are you? For the first time since entering the chamber, Mara looked directly at him. A student. The word should have sounded weak. It did not. The inquiry ended without resolution, which was worse than a verdict. By Academy law, Mara could not be punished without proof of illegal force. By war house pressure, she could not be ignored. By political necessity, she could not be sent home without confirming that humans were either dangerous or afraid. So Commander Valor chose the oldest solution in military history. He ordered a test. Combat Evaluation Deck 3 had been built for public humiliation, disguised as measurement. Its walls were black alloy. Its ceiling was a grid of restraint emitters, gravity modifiers, drone ports, and ping compliance fields. Cadets came there to prove rankings. Instructors came there to break arrogance into useful shapes. By sunset, half the academy had found an excuse to watch from the observation tiers. Mara entered alone. Her opponent was not a cadet. Valor was too careful for that. Instead, 12 academy combat drones unfolded from the ceiling like steel insects, each one calibrated to mimic a different predator discipline. Their limbs sharpened into non-lethal blades. Their optical cores brightened. Their movement systems hummed with enough speed to overwhelm most organic reflexes. The announcement echoed across the chamber. Objective: survive 90 seconds. A murmur passed through the spectators. 90 seconds was not victory. It was mercy. First-year cadets were expected to last 30 against 3 drones. Advanced Apex candidates lasted 60 against 6. 12 was not an evaluation. It was an accusation with machinery attached. Mara rolled her shoulders once. The drones attacked. The first came low. The second came high. The third fired a restraint cable at her knees, while the fourth curved behind her blind side. It should have been beautiful. It was certainly fast. Mara stepped backward, not away, through. The low drone struck the cable meant for her knees and spun sideways. The high drone adjusted to compensate and clipped its own partner's wing joint. Mara turned her hip by a fraction, let the fourth drone commit, and guided its momentum into the floor with 2 fingers against its chassis. It hit hard enough to crack the black alloy. The observation tier went silent. She was not fighting like the Academy expected. She was not stronger than the drones. She was not faster than the drones. She was doing something far more insulting. She was allowing them to defeat themselves. At 20 seconds, 5 drones were down. At 49, at 52, the last 3 surrounded her and synchronized their attack pattern. Valor leaned forward in the command box. That pattern had no opening. It had been designed from Silari swarm logic, Carvax pincer aggression, and Othran pressure dominance. Even instructors avoided it unless wearing full neural armor. Mara exhaled. That was all. Just one breath, slow and controlled. The first drone hesitated for less than 1/10 of a second because its predictive system detected a rhythm change. The second adjusted to the first. The third overcorrected. Mara moved into the gap their own intelligence had created. Her palm touched one central stabilizer. Her heel tapped another. Her shoulder brushed the third, as if passing through a crowded hallway. All 3 drones shut down at once. Elapsed time: 57 seconds. No one cheered. Mara stood in the center of the deck, breathing evenly, surrounded by 12 broken machines. She had not used a weapon. She had not triggered a restricted field. She had not exceeded any measurable violence threshold. The Academy AI spoke into the silence. Evaluation complete. Subject used minimum necessary force. That phrase struck harder than the drones. Minimum necessary force meant she could have done more, much more. Valor's eyes shifted toward Cross. Cross did not smile, but her expression carried the grim satisfaction of someone watching a warning finally become visible. Then the medical channel from the infirmary cut across every Academy speaker without authorization. RUL Dravik's voice filled the evaluation deck, ragged and terrified. Do not make her stand up. Every cadet in the observation tier froze. The transmission crackled. Someone in the infirmary shouted for the channel to be closed, but RUL kept speaking, his voice breaking under the weight of memory. She was holding back at the table. She was holding back while we touched her. She was holding back while we fell. Mara looked up toward the nearest speaker. RUL whispered the final words like a prayer to something he hated. If the human ever stops holding back, none of us are Apex anymore. The Academy did not sleep after Rul Dravik's warning. For 12 hours, Dominion War Academy became a fortress pretending to be a school. Armed security drones hovered at corridor junctions. Combat instructors moved in pairs. The infirmary sealed its inner doors, not to keep enemies out, but because 5 Apex heirs refused to remain in rooms where a human might walk past the glass. Every student channel burned with clipped recordings of Rul's voice, repeating the same impossible sentence, until it became less like fear and more like prophecy. If the human ever stops holding back, none of us are Apex anymore. By morning, the warhouses had answered. Their ships arrived before first bell, 7 sleek vessels, cutting through Veratha's lightning storms and docking at the Academy's diplomatic ring without asking permission. They came wrapped in old blood and newer politics. Karvak spearlords, Silari matriarchs, Othran armor priests, Velkathi fearmasters, and 3 lesser houses that had spent centuries clinging to predator status by supporting those above them. Their delegates entered the council chamber, wearing ceremonial combat harnesses, which was Dominion custom for saying negotiations had already failed. Mara Ven watched the arrivals from a training window 3 decks below. She stood alone, one hand resting against the glass, face lit by white lightning from the planet beneath. The storm made every ship appear and vanish in flashes, like blades moving through dark water. Behind her, Ambassador Cross entered without knocking. "They want you expelled," Cross said. Mara did not turn, only expelled. They opened with execution. That seems dramatic. It was meant to be. Cross stepped beside her. They cannot accept what happened, because it was too clean. If you had broken bones, they could call you savage. If you had panicked, they could call you unstable. If you had killed them, they could call humans dangerous and simple. But you controlled the outcome. Mara watched another lightning vein crawl across the planet. Control scares predators more than violence. Cross studied her profile. "Who taught you that?" Mara's answer came too quickly. "No one." Cross let the lie sit between them. It was not the kind of lie people told to deceive. It was the kind soldiers carried because the truth had teeth. The council hearing began at second bell. Commander Vaylor sat at the center of the crescent table, but everyone in the chamber understood he no longer controlled the room. The Warhouse delegates towered in their stations, their family sigils glowing above them like accusations. Holographic replays of the banquet and drone evaluation rotated in the center, each loop making the same argument without words. 5 heirs defeated, 12 drones neutralized, 1 human unmarked. Mara stood in the witness circle again. This time, she was not alone. Cross stood behind her left shoulder, not close enough to shield her, close enough to remind the room that humanity had noticed. The first Karvax, Spearlord, slammed his fist into the table hard enough to crack the projection field. This academy exists to identify Apex Command species. A cadet who conceals military-grade incapacitation methods is not a student. She is a planted weapon. Murmurs of agreement spread through the chamber. Mara looked at the cracked light, not the speaker. Vaylor's voice remained level. "No prohibited weapon has been found." Then broaden the definition. Cross laughed softly. Every predator head turned toward her. The sound had been small, almost polite, but it changed the temperature in the chamber. Cross raised one eyebrow. That is always the first instinct of frightened empires. When reality proves inconvenient, rewrite the law. The Silari matriarch unfolded 2 translucent wings, a display of anger and threat. Humanity should be careful with insults. Humanity has been careful, Cross said. That is why your heirs are alive. Mara's fingers twitched once. Only Cross noticed. Vaylor did too. The commander leaned forward. There is a legal path. Dominion Academy law permits a contested capability trial when a cadet's ranking is disputed by 3 or more recognized houses. Cross's expression hardened. No. The Carvax Spearlord smiled with too many teeth. The law is older than your species' presence in Coalition space. It is also optional, Cross said. No cadet can be forced into a dominance gauntlet after an unprovoked attack. Unless, Valor said quietly, their command track eligibility is under formal challenge. Silence folded over the room. Mara finally looked at him. Valor did not enjoy what he was doing. That made it worse. Cruelty was easy to resist. Cowardice-wearing procedure was harder, because it never admitted it had chosen a side. If Cadet Ven refuses, Valor continued, her provisional ranking will be suspended pending interspecies review. Humanity's eligibility for senior combat command training may also be delayed. Cross stepped forward. You are threatening an entire species because 5 aristocrats lost a fight they started. I am describing the law. No, Mara said. The single word cut through them both. Cross turned. Mara. No, Mara repeated, still facing Valor. He is describing the trap. The commander's silver eyes narrowed. Mara looked around the crescent table at the Warhouse delegates. One by one. If I refuse, humans are cowards. If I protest, humans are emotional. If I fight and lose, humans are overclassified. If I fight and win, humans are dangerous. The Carvax Spearlord tilted his head. Then choose carefully. Mara met his gaze. I already did. Cross's hand closed around the black file at her belt. Cadet Ven, you are not obligated to prove humanity's worth to anyone in this room. For a moment, Mara's calm cracked enough for something older to show through. Not anger, not pride, a tiredness so deep it seemed inherited. No, she said softly, but if I don't, they will make the next human prove it, and maybe the next one won't walk away. That silenced even the Warhouses. Valor looked down. Cross's jaw tightened, but she did not stop her. The trial was scheduled for sunset. News spread through the academy faster than the official announcement. A dominance gauntlet had not been performed in 18 years, and the last cadet who entered one had left with 3 replacement organs and a ceremonial rank. 7 species would be represented. 7 combat styles. 7 chances to make the human bleed in front of everyone. The arena was prepared while classes were suspended. Tiered observation decks unfolded from the walls. Gravity fields were recalibrated. Medical drones lined the ceiling in silent rows. The Academy AI reviewed old ceremonial protocols and displayed them above every corridor in polished Dominion script. A contested cadet may yield. A contested cadet may be incapacitated. A contested cadet may not receive outside tactical aid. The final line appeared 3 seconds later, flickered once, then stabilized. Lethal force prohibited unless authorized by command. Mara read that line from the arena entrance. Beside her, Cross opened the black file. Inside was a single sheet of matte material that did not reflect the lights. It carried no seal except a small blue circle in the corner, the mark of the Terran Defense Council. Commander Valor approached with 2 guards and stopped when he saw it. His fear returned. Cross handed the document to him. Formal notice. Valor read the first line. His throat moved. Mara could see the words reflected faintly in his silver eyes. Human Restraint Doctrine. Level 2 authorized under Coalition observation. The commander looked up slowly. Level 2. Cross's voice was quiet. She used Level 1 at the banquet. Behind the arena glass, 7 alien champions entered to thunderous approval. They carried training weapons, ceremonial armor, old hatred, and the confidence of species that had never needed to imagine being prey. Mara stepped toward the gate. Valor caught her arm lightly, then seemed to realize what he had done and let go. "What is Level 2?" he asked. Mara looked through the glass at the waiting champions. Then, for the first time since arriving at the academy, She smiled without warmth. Permission to stand up. The arena gate opened, and every species in the Dominion War Academy expected the human to become more violent. They expected rage. They expected desperation. They expected the mask to crack and reveal the primitive thing their war houses had spent 2 days accusing her of being. The observation tiers leaned forward in hungry silence as Mara Ven stepped onto the black combat floor. No armor on her shoulders, no weapon in her hands, no visible fear in her eyes. Across from her stood 7 champions. Each had been chosen to prove a different argument. The Carvax champion was built like a siege engine, plated in natural armor, and carrying a blunted spear longer than Mara's body. The Silari hovered above the floor on translucent wings, limbs folded like knives. The Othran wore gravity-weighted gauntlets that could dent a hull. The Velkathi stood motionless, its eyeless face turned toward Mara as if listening to her pulse. 3 others circled farther back, all claws, reach, mass, venom, and inherited certainty. The Academy announcer's voice rolled through the arena. Dominance Gauntlet begins on command. Cadet may yield at any time. Mara did not look at the announcer. She looked at Commander Vaylor in the command box, then at Ambassador Cross, standing behind him with her arms crossed and her face carved from stone. Then Mara placed 1 foot forward. The arena AI began the count. 3. The 7 champions lowered into attack stances. 2. The crowd seemed to hold one enormous breath. 1. Mara exhaled. Begin. The Carvax moved first, because Carvax always moved first. His spear came low and fast, a sweeping strike, meant to take Mara's legs and end the trial in 3 seconds. The old Mara from the banquet would have remained seated. The Mara from the drone deck would have redirected him with a touch. This Mara stepped toward the spear. A sound passed through the crowd, half gasp, half satisfaction. It looked like a mistake. It looked like panic. It looked like the fragile human had finally chosen the one direction no prey should choose. Then her knee touched the spear shaft at the exact point where force became balance. The Carvax's own momentum lifted his front foot from the floor. Mara's hand brushed his wrist. Not a strike, not a grab, just contact. His spear completed the motion without him. The shaft turned, caught under his armored elbow, and drove his own shoulder joint against the edge of his chest plate. He dropped to 1 knee with a roar, not injured, but locked inside his own strength. Mara was already gone. The Silari dove from above, wings vibrating so fast they blurred. Mara did not look up. She listened. The Silari's shadow passed over her shoulder. Mara lowered by a fraction, turned her back to the attack, and let the aerial champion miss by less than a finger's width. Her elbow rose behind her, catching the Silari under the sternum with the gentle inevitability of a closing door. The Silari folded in midair. Mara caught 1 wing edge and spun, not to throw her, but to redirect the fall. The Silari hit the floor, sliding instead of breaking. 2 champions down in 11 seconds. The crowd stopped cheering. Mara did not. The Othran charged next, both gravity gauntlets glowing as the arena floor warped under each step. Every instructor knew that charge. It was called the Fortress Break, designed to crush shields, doors, and disobedient bodies. No unarmored cadet was supposed to meet it. Mara waited until the final step. Then she moved sideways. Not far. Barely enough. Her palm tapped the Othran's gauntlet. Her other hand touched the side of his jaw. His own artificial gravity dragged him past her center line and down. The champion struck the floor, so hard the impact field flashed white. He tried to rise, but Mara's foot rested lightly against the back of 1 knee. He froze. Everyone saw it. The smallest pressure, the clearest choice. Move and destroy your own joint. Stay still and live. The Othran stayed still. For the first time in Dominion history, A gauntlet audience understood that mercy could feel like humiliation. Mara was not fighting harder. She was fighting softer. That was the horror of it. She was removing violence from the arena and leaving only consequence. Every champion who attacked her discovered too late that their instincts had already written the ending. Their lunges became traps. Their weight became chains. Their rage became timing. The more powerful they were, the easier they were to read. In the command box, Vaylor's hands tightened around the rail. "This is not level 2, he whispered. Cross did not take her eyes off Mara. "Yes, it is. She is barely touching them. That is the point." Below, the Velkothi finally moved. The eyeless champion did not charge. It advanced slowly, head tilted, listening to micro-tremors in Mara's muscles, reading the rhythm beneath rhythm. Velkothi were fear masters, trained to sense hesitation before it became motion. This one had not attacked because it had been studying. Mara turned toward it. For the first time, she looked interested. The Velkothi smiled with a mouth too wide for its face. It had found something, perhaps fatigue, perhaps pain, perhaps the flaw hidden beneath human calm. It darted forward, not with brute force, but with elegance, striking for the nerve cluster under Mara's ribs. Mara let it hit. The impact made the human audience section flinch. Even Cross took half a step forward. Mara's face tightened, but she did not fall. Instead, her hand closed around the Velkothi's wrist. Her thumb pressed once. The Velkothi's smile vanished. Its entire body went rigid. Mara leaned close enough that only arena microphones caught her words. Reading fear is not the same as understanding courage. She released it. The Velkothi collapsed to its knees, shaking. That sentence reached every speaker in the academy, and something inside the crowd changed. Not admiration, not yet. Recognition. The academy AI suddenly spoke over the announcer, its voice distorted by restricted access protocols. Unsealed reference detected. Vaylor spun toward the console. What reference? The arena lights flickered. A red file appeared in the central hollow field, rotating above the combat floor for every cadet, instructor, delegate, and Warhouse observer to see. Human combat assessment. Early coalition contact era. Cross went pale. Vaylor read the first visible line aloud before he understood what he was saying. Human solitary threat rating intentionally suppressed by review council order. The arena went silent. The file expanded. Fragments flashed too quickly for anyone to absorb fully, but enough survived. Terms, warnings, old observer notes from 31 years ago. Restraint predator, escalation-sensitive species. Do not classify by baseline morphology. Human combat efficiency increases under moral pressure. Potential command threat to dominance-based hierarchy. Mara stood in the center of the arena, surrounded by fallen champions, and looked up at the file as if seeing a ghost she had hoped would stay buried. The Karvax Spearlord in the diplomatic tier rose slowly. That file is forged. The Academy AI answered before Vaylor could. Authenticity confirmed. The words landed like orbital fire. The gauntlet had not revealed that humans were dangerous. It had revealed that the Dominion had known. For 3 decades, someone had buried the truth. Someone had accepted humans into the coalition while ensuring they remained underestimated, low-ranked, politically useful, and tactically dismissed. Not because humans lacked apex qualities, but because their strength did not fit a predator empire's favorite lie. Biology was destiny. Mara looked toward Cross. Cross looked back, and for the first time since arriving, the ambassador seemed afraid of what Mara might ask later. Then the arena shields slammed down, every exit sealed. The fallen champion's medical collars flashed red. Vaylor snapped toward the command console. Who authorized lockdown? The system did not answer. The remaining 3 champions staggered backward as the floor beneath them shifted. Weapon racks emerged from the walls. Not training weapons, live ones. Restraint emitters sparked and died overhead. Medical drones dropped from their ports and crashed lifelessly to the floor. The Academy AI spoke again, but now its voice carried something beneath the distortion. Not failure, intrusion, safety limits removed. Cross drew a compact sidearm from beneath her diplomatic coat. The Warhouse delegates erupted in panic. Valor shouted commands the system ignored. On the arena floor, one of the live weapons activated and turned toward Mara, then another, then all of them. Mara slowly straightened. For the first time, her breathing changed. Not fear, permission. The first live weapon fired at Mara's heart. It should have killed her before the crowd finished screaming. The rifle mounted in the arena wall was not Academy training hardware. It was an anti-boarding pulse cannon, the kind used to stop armored insurgents in ship corridors. Its white discharge crossed the arena faster than an organic eye could follow, burning a line through the air where Mara had been standing. But Mara was no longer there. She had moved before the weapon fired, not after. Before. That was when Commander Valor understood the most frightening part of human restraint doctrine. It was not reaction. It was prediction. Mara had read the machine's targeting shift from the angle of its casing, the vibration in the floor, the delay between the lockdown and activation. She had not dodged a shot. She had dodged an intention. The pulse struck the arena wall and exploded against the shield, throwing white fire across the black floor. The remaining 3 champions scattered in panic. One Silari cadet screamed as a second turret unfolded above her and locked onto the heat signature beneath her wings. Mara ran toward her. The Silari froze, trapped by instinct. Her species survived by flight, but the shielded arena gave her no sky. Her wings beat once, uselessly. The turret adjusted. Mara hit her from the side and drove them both down as the pulse cut through the space above them. It clipped the Solari's wingtip instead of her spine. The alien shrieked, not from injury alone, but from the impossible realization that the human she had come to defeat had just spent her own body to keep her alive. "Stay low," Mara said. The Silari stared at her. Why? Mara was already moving. Because dying stupid helps no one. Across the arena, the Othran champion tried to lift one of the fallen cadets. His gravity gauntlets sparked from the system override, dragging him toward the floor. A weapon rack opened behind him, extending a rotating blade launcher. The Othran did not see it. His entire attention was on the injured Velkothi trembling beside him. Mara crossed 20 meters of open kill zone. 3 turrets tracked her. The audience saw only fragments. A black uniform dropping under a beam, a hand striking the floor to change direction, a shoulder twisting between 2 converging shots. Mara moved like a living contradiction. Too controlled to be desperate, too fast to be calm, too human to be anything the Academy had a category for. She reached the Othran and slammed her palm into his gauntlet release. The gravity field died. He gasped as his arm came free. "Carry him," Mara ordered. The Othran stared. "You are helping us." "No," Mara said, shoving him aside as the blade launcher fired. "I am keeping the scoreboard honest." Blades shrieked past them, ricocheting against the shield. One cut across Mara's upper arm. Blood ran dark down her sleeved eye and the command box. Ambassador Cross shouted over the chaos. "Valor, give me manual access." "I am locked out," Valor snapped, claws moving across dead controls. "The intrusion has command priority." "From where?" The Academy AI answered through every speaker, its voice fractured into layers. "Correction. Command priority belongs to Dominion Continuity Protocol." Valor went still. Cross looked at him. "What is that?" He did not answer. That was answer enough. In the diplomatic tier, the War House delegates had stopped blaming Mara. They were too busy trying not to die. The arena shields had expanded, trapping not only the combat floor, but the first 3 observation levels inside a transparent dome. Civilians, cadets, heirs, instructors, servants, and political observers pressed against the barriers, while emergency doors ignored their palm prints. A young Carvax child in ceremonial armor began clawing at the glass from the spectator side. Mara saw him. So did the nearest weapon. It rotated away from the arena floor and toward the trapped audience. For one perfect, terrible second, everyone understood the trap had never been about killing Mara alone. It was about making her choose. If she protected herself, civilians died. If she protected the civilians, the arena weapons would record a human moving aggressively toward protected observers. If she disabled the system with too much force, the broadcast could be edited into proof of human attack. If she failed, dead airs would ignite war. Every path had been designed to end with humanity accused. Mara's eyes lifted toward the command box. Cross saw the question before Mara asked it. Do I reveal more? Cross shook her head once. Not yet. Mara turned anyway. The weapon fired at the Carvax child. Mara threw the Carvax champion's fallen spear. It crossed the arena end over end, not at the weapon, but at the shield anchor above it. The spear struck the anchor ring, bounced, and dropped into the turret's rotation track. The weapon jammed mid-discharge. The pulse burst inward, melting its own barrel into white slag. The child fell backward, alive. The arena saw it. The cameras saw it too. Then every screen in the academy changed. The official broadcast feed, which had shown Mara moving like a threat moments before, split in half. On one side, the edited version made her appear to attack the observation tier. On the other, raw arena telemetry showed the truth. Target lock on civilian, human intervention, weapon self-destruction. The Academy AI had not done that. Someone else had broken through. A new signal appeared in blue text across the holofield. Terran observation channel active. Cross lowered her weapon by a fraction. Relief and dread crossing her face together. They're watching. Valor looked at her. Who? Before she could answer, Mara's wrist comm sparked alive. A human voice came through, old, calm, and cold enough to quiet the arena. Cadet Ven, this is Terran Defense Oversight. We have live telemetry. Your restraint remains noted. Mara ducked under another pulse, grabbed a wounded champion by the collar, and dragged him behind a fallen drone. Noted is not helpful. Understood, the voice said. Civilians are now confirmed at risk. Cross closed her eyes. Valor heard her whisper. No. Mara's face changed. Only slightly, but the 3 champions nearest her felt it like a pressure drop before a storm. Until that moment, she had been fighting inside invisible walls, every movement chosen to save lives without showing the full shape of what she was. Now, one of those walls had vanished. The Othran champion swallowed hard. Human, he said, voice rough. What happens now? Mara tore a strip from her bleeding sleeve and wrapped it around the Solari's injured wing with one practiced motion. Now you listen. The Carvax champion, still locked on one knee from her earlier hold, bared his teeth. To you. Mara looked at him. He stopped speaking. No threat passed between them. No growl. No dominance display. Just a human gaze, exhausted and bleeding, carrying the unbearable calm of someone who had already calculated how everyone in the room could die and had decided to forbid it. You wanted to know what humans are, Mara said, loud enough for the microphones to catch. Fine. We are the species that survives by turning enemies into a unit before the universe finishes killing us. A weapon rack opened behind her. She did not look back. Arguel, she said, From the infirmary channel, still illegally open, RUL Dravik answered with a terrified breath. I am here. You remember how I dropped you? Yes. Good. Tell your cousin to relax his shoulder, or the next shot takes his head off. The Carvax champion's eyes widened. My cousin. RUL's voice broke through the speakers. Do what she says, Theron. The champion obeyed. The pulse skimmed over his relaxed shoulder, instead of burning through his skull. In that instant, the arena changed. Not because the danger lessened. It grew worse by the second. More weapons unfolded. The shields tightened. The hacked system began venting atmosphere from the upper tier to force panic. But the champions stopped acting like rivals. They became Mara's limbs. The Silari tracked overhead weapons by sound. The Othran carried the wounded. The Carvax shielded smaller cadets with his armored body. The Velkothi, still shaking, used his fear sense to warn when civilians were about to break formation. Mara stood at the center of it all, issuing commands with brutal simplicity, predicting angles, redirecting bodies, turning predator instincts into human strategy. For 3 minutes, they did the impossible. No one died, and that was when the saboteur abandoned subtlety. The arena floor opened, not fully, just a narrow black seam spreading beneath the center ring. Cold vapor spilled upward. Warning lights flashed in a color no student had ever seen, because no student was supposed to know the academy had a vault beneath the arena. Vaylor's face drained of color. Cross aimed her weapon at him. What is under the floor? He whispered one word. Archive. The seam widened. Something massive moved below. The Academy AI spoke again, but this time the intruding voice beneath it sounded almost pleased. Dominion Continuity Protocol, escalation approved. Releasing final assessment asset. Mara turned toward the opening. For the first time since the banquet, true fear crossed Ambassador Cross's face. Not fear for Mara. Fear of what Mara might be forced to become. The thing beneath the arena did not roar when it woke. That was worse. It rose through the black seam in silence, vast and patient, as if the Academy had not released a beast, but uncovered a buried verdict. Steam rolled across its body in pale sheets. The observation lights flickered over layers of bone-white armor for jointed forelimbs, a skull shaped like a siege mask, and eyes buried deep behind ridges of living plating. It unfolded slowly, one section at a time, until even the Carvax champion looked small beside it. No cadet spoke. No instructor gave orders. Even the hacked weapons paused, as if the system itself wanted the room to understand what had entered it. Commander Vaylor staggered back from the command rail. That asset was decommissioned. Ambassador Cross kept her weapon trained on him, but her eyes were on the creature. What is it? Vaylor's voice came out hollow. A command breaker. The name spread through the arena like poison. Mara saw the reaction before she understood the words. The Othran dropped the wounded cadet he was carrying and backed away, hands shaking. The Solari's wings clamped tight against her spine. The Velkothi collapsed completely, both hands pressed to the sides of his head, trembling as if the creature's presence was a sound too loud to survive. The Carvax champion, Theron, whispered, "They used those in the old obedience wars." Mara's eyes stayed on the beast. Against armies? Theron swallowed. Against commanders. The command breaker lowered its head. A vibration passed through the floor. Not sound. Pressure. A wave of instinctive authority that slammed into every predator nervous system in the arena. Cadets in the observation tier dropped to their knees. Warhouse heirs clawed at their own armor. Instructors who had survived boarding actions and orbital sieges bowed before they realized they were doing it. The creature did not attack their bodies first. It attacked hierarchied. IT forced ancient prey memory into apex blood. Mara felt the pressure too, but differently. Her pulse spiked. Her vision narrowed. Her muscles demanded motion, not submission. Response. The old human thing in her bones did not recognize an alpha. It recognized a threat near civilians. The command breaker turned toward the trapped observation tier. Hundreds of cadets were pinned against the transparent shields. Among them, the Karvak's child Mara had stared through the barrier, too young to hide his terror. The creature's jaw split open vertically, revealing rows of grinding black plates. A low harmonic began in its throat, and the nearest spectators started bleeding from the nose. "Valor!" Cross shouted. "Shut it down." "I can't." He struck the console again and again. "The protocol has severed command authority. Then who controls it?" The arena screens answered. A face appeared across every display. Senior Adjudicator Melis Vorn, Head of Dominion Continuity, Architect of Academy Species Rankings, and the official who had signed Mara Ven's admission papers with a smile cold enough to frost glass. "Commander Valor," Vorn said, calm amid the screams. "Your hesitation has endangered Dominion stability. I have assumed emergency authority." Valor stared at the screen in disbelief. "You released a war asset into a student arena." "I released a truth mechanism," Vorn replied. "A true apex species commands fear. If humanity is what Ambassador Cross claims, let the human prove it. If not, the hierarchy remains intact." Mara looked up at the screen. "You'll kill your own students to protect a ranking chart?" Vorn's gaze shifted to her. "I will sacrifice confusion to preserve order." The command breaker stepped toward the observation tier. The shield trembled. Cross spoke into her comm, voice low and urgent. "Terran oversight. Civilians are in direct line. Confirm escalation authority." Static answered. The hack was jamming them. Cross tried again. "Oversight, confirm authority." Nothing. Mara heard the absence like a door closing. The remaining champions looked at her now, not with hatred, not even with fear of her. Fear for what stood ahead. Fear for the civilians behind the shield. Fear because every lesson they had ever been taught had failed at once, and the only person still standing straight was the species their academy had called inferior. Theron forced himself to his feet. "Human," he said, voice shaking. "Tell us what to do." Mara did not answer immediately. Blood ran down her arm. Her ribs burned from the Velkathi strike. Her left knee had started to stiffen from the drone deck fight. She could feel the fatigue now, not as weakness, but as information. The body counting debts, the mind refusing to pay them yet. The command breaker struck the shield. The impact threw cadets backward across the observation tier. The Karvak's child disappeared beneath a wave of bodies. The second strike would crack the barrier. The third would open it. Mara turned to the champions. "Get everyone behind the fallen drone casings. Stack armor front. Wings low. No one runs alone." The Solari's voice broke. "That thing will not chase us. It will go through us." "I know." The Velkathi looked up from the floor, eyes wide though his species had none. "You are afraid." Mara met his face. Yes. That admission stunned them more than any boast. Then she stepped past them. Cross saw where she was going and went pale. "Mara, no." Mara kept walking toward the center ring, toward the place where the command breaker's shadow swallowed the lights. Cross ran to the command glass. "You do not have authorization." Mara stopped beneath the shattered broadcast drones and looked up at her. "The civilians are at risk. Oversight has not confirmed. The comms are jammed." "Then wait." The command breaker struck the shield again. A crack appeared. Tiny, bright, fatal. Mara's expression changed, and Cross understood that she had already lost the argument. Not because Mara was reckless, because she was human, and there was a line no protocol had ever successfully kept humanity behind. Mara reached to her belt. She removed the small metal cup issued to every cadet for ceremonial meals. The same cup she had turned over at the banquet. The same gesture that had begun with 5 bullies on the floor and had now become the center of an academy's nightmare. Valor whispered, "What is she doing?" Cross lowered her head, ending restraint. The arena microphones caught the sentence. Every screen repeated it. Mara placed the cup on the black floor, upright. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then the command breaker turned from the cracked shield and looked at her. Mara stared back at the creature bred to break commanders, the monster built to make Apex blood kneel, the living proof of everything the Dominion believed about fear. Slowly, deliberately, she turned the cup upside down. The Terran channel burst through the static for half a second, one voice shouting over interference. Level 3 remains prohibited unless... The command breaker charged. Mara moved toward it. The command breaker crossed the arena like a falling building. Its first step cratered the black floor. Its second split one of the fallen drone casings in half. Its third brought its skull down toward Mara with enough force to turn bone, armor, and pride into paste. The observation tier screamed as one body. Commander Valor shouted something no one heard. Ambassador Cross slammed both hands against the command glass. Mara did not dodge backward. She went under it, not away from the strike, beneath the certainty of it. She slid across the floor as the command breaker's head smashed down where her body should have been, and her bloody hand struck the inside seam below its jaw. Not hard, not like a blow, like she was pressing a hidden switch the universe had forgotten to protect. The creature's front legs buckled. The arena shook. Mara rolled out from under its chest before the weight came down, rose on one knee, and touched 2 fingers to the side of her own throat. The Terran channel flared through the static again, broken but audible. Level 3 authorization confirmed. Civilian preservation priority. Cross closed her eyes. Valor whispered, "What is Level 3? Cross answered without looking at him. The reason we spend our lives teaching humans not to become what fear wants them to become. The command breaker recovered with terrifying speed. Its jaw split open and released another dominance pulse. Cadets collapsed in the stands. The Carvax child screamed beneath a pile of bodies. Even Theron dropped to one knee, fighting his own blood as it begged him to submit. Mara stood in the center of the wave. Her face tightened. Her body shook once. Then she breathed in, and the pulse failed to own her. She stepped forward, not as prey, not as predator, but as something the Dominion had never built a category for. A species that had crawled through famine, ice, war, plague, vacuum, grief, and still learned to place trembling hands over strangers and say, "Not today." The command breaker lunged. Mara moved first. Her heel struck a cracked floor plate, launching a shard into the beast's left eye ridge. Her shoulder hit its forelimb joint at the exact moment its weight shifted. Her palm drove into a nerve cluster under the armor gap she had mapped in less than 3 seconds. Every movement looked too small to matter until the monster's enormous body betrayed it. It stumbled. Mara was already climbing. She used armor ridges as handholds, not fighting the creature's motion but riding it, turning each violent thrash into lift. The command breaker slammed itself against the shield, trying to crush her. Mara released, dropped, hit the floor hard enough to tear a gasp from the human section, then came up running before the pain finished arriving. "Theron!" she shouted. The Carvax champion jerked upright. "Left flank. Make it turn." He obeyed, not because he was conquered, because she was right. "Silari, wings low, draw the head." The injured Silari moved, bleeding and terrified, skimming across the floor, just high enough to catch the beast's attention. "Othran, shield the civilians." The Othran tore a broken drone plate from the floor and planted himself before the cracked observation barrier. "Velkathi, tell me when it feels pride." The eyeless cadet trembled. Pride. It was bred to dominate. It will overcommit when it thinks we are broken." The Velkothi turned toward the beast, shaking under the psychic pressure, and then nodded. "Now," he whispered, "it thinks you are alone." Mara smiled through blood. That was its mistake. The command breaker charged again. This time, the arena did not see one human against a monster. It saw the impossible shape of human command. Enemies became a unit. Fear became timing. Injury became information. Every species' strength was pulled into one strategy, not by dominance, but by trust forced alive in the middle of death. Theron drew the beast left. The Silari cut across its sight line. The Othran braced the cracked shield as civilians crawled behind him. The Velkothi screamed, the creatures intent a heartbeat before each strike, and Mara used every heartbeat. She ran straight up the command breaker's lowered skull, planted one foot on its eye ridge, and drove her hand into the soft seam behind its cranial plate, not with a blade, not with poison, with the precise pressure of a species that had studied how to stop killing without becoming helpless. The beast froze. Its mouth opened. The dominance pulse died in its throat. Mara held the nerve lock with one shaking arm, her boots sliding against living armor, her face pale from pain. "Sleep," she whispered. The command breaker fell. It did not die. It collapsed so gently that the floor barely cracked beneath it, a mountain forced into stillness by a human who had chosen control when destruction would have been easier. For 3 seconds, no one understood the battle was over. Then the observation shield flickered open. The Karvak's child crawled free from the crowd and stared down at Mara. His small ceremonial armor was cracked. His face was wet with blood and tears. Mara dropped from the beast's neck and landed badly. One knee hit the floor. She tried to stand and failed. Theron caught her. The same bloodline that had demanded her humiliation now held her upright in front of the entire academy. Every screen above the arena flashed again. Terran blue over Dominion red. Raw files poured into public view. Melis Vorn's orders, the suppressed human assessments, the edited broadcast plan, the continuity protocol authorization, the deliberate attempt to manufacture a human massacre. Adjudicator Vorn's face appeared once more, no longer calm. "This transmission is illegal." Vaylor stepped to the command rail. His voice carried through the arena, rough and ashamed. "No, it is evidence." The Warhouse delegates said nothing. Their heirs were alive because of the human they had tried to destroy. Their ranking system lay broken because mercy had outperformed fear. In front of every camera, they had failed to silence. Mara looked up at the tears, breathing hard. Cross entered the arena and stopped before her. For one moment, the ambassador's discipline almost held. Then she placed a hand on Mara's shoulder, careful of the blood. "You revealed level 3, Cross said quietly. Mara looked at the unconscious command breaker, then at the rescued cadets, then at the 5 former enemies, watching her with expressions that no longer fit hatred. "No," she said. "I revealed why we restrain it." By dawn, Dominion War Academy had changed its oldest law. No species would be ranked by biology alone. No cadet would be forced into submission ritual. No command candidate would be measured only by claw, fang, armor, venom, or fear. And when Mara Ven walked into the next assembly, with one arm bandaged, one eye bruised, and her black uniform torn at the shoulder, the hall did not kneel. That would have insulted her. Instead, every Apex cadet stood, not for a conqueror, for the first human they finally understood,